I was in a 3-day summer camp with my older brother, the one that died. There was a swimming pool there, so he decided to teach me to swim. When he had given me some fundamentals to work with, he told me to stay in the shallow water and close to the edge. He then got out and went to play with the roller skaters. It couldn't have been more than 5 minutes of practice before I decided to combine techniques and swim across the pool. I made it halfway, about 8 feet. In my desperation, after struggling for what seemed like forever, I did what they do in the cartoons. I stuck my hand out of the water and lowered my fingers, one at a time. When I lowered them all, I let out my toxic air with great relief. They said that, when they rescued me, I was lying on the pool floor. They thought I was playing, so they waited for me to come up for air. When I didn't, one of the counselors dove in after me. No one knows how long I was there before being spotted. Lot of kids. It's been a long time ago. I have always said that I remember as if it was yesterday. Guess I'm gonna have to stop saying that. The experience itself is why I said that. I cannot remember if the figures faded in, or I opened my eyes. At any rate, I have never been faced with such brightness. It was like being in a room that was being lit by its personal sun, only brighter. I really don't remember the number odd figures I saw. I always followed my religious background and figured 12. For a minute, these men just stared. Then the middle one, Peter, leaned forward and his face was inches away from mine. Then he began to slowly shake his head. No. As he did this, the bright lights very slowly began to soften, and slowly began to fade into a mixture of white and powder blue. I should say it was so bright in there. It was in black and white, a bright light making all the people look like shadows. I could make out faces, especially the one that leaned toward me, but they were all in black and white. Anyway, as the white light began to fade, the number of people began to grow. At the same time, the shapes, or the heights were changing. Color in the people, trees, chairs, etc. Then, there I lay, in the middle of a circle of children and adults.
I was 20 years old, a college student. In 1968, some friends and I were injecting procaine intravenously. This was a very risky thing to do, there being quite a fine line between a satisfactory dose and overamping with the possibility of death. Of course, all 20-year-olds are immortal. I got up, feeling the urge to vomit, and quickly went into the bathroom, one of my friends with me. I got down on my knees, head over the toilet. At this point, I lost consciousness, but do not think that I fell. All of a sudden, I was in a very dark, long tunnel. I have no memory of whether or not I had a body. What really was most prominent was a reddish gold light at the end of the tunnel. It was the most beautiful color that I have even seen, before or since. My impulse was overwhelmingly to go through the tunnel and into the light. Then out of nowhere, there were vaguely distinguishable figures in black shrouds who seemed to be beckoning me. These figures were at the very end of the darkness, near but not into the light. I had the distinct feeling that these were deceased relatives, but none were individually recognizable as expired grandparents, my having 3 at the time. There was absolutely no fear. Quite to the contrary, I wanted very much to go through the tunnel and into this indescribably beautiful, warm, and welcoming light. The figures in the shrouds were by no means as alluring as the light was. Then, of course, I came to. I have no idea how much time had passed, and did not ask my friend. I just thanked him, got up, and went back into the living room. I think that I stopped shooting up for that day, but do not really recall. I do definitely remember that I did not mention this experience to my friends. I think that it was at least 25 years before I ever told anyone. This after having heard other people discuss similar experiences on TV talk shows. Prior to my own experience, I had never heard of such a thing.
I had just miscarried with twins at about 4 months. I was operated on to clean the womb out. When I came out of the anesthetic, I was in terrible agony. Something was pressing against something inside me, and I was screaming in agony. I could not get anyone's attention. Eventually, they came running and hooked up machines to monitor my vitals. The doctors and nurses finally started to operate on me on the bed in the ward. The pain was killing me. I must have gone into shock. My blood pressure was 0, and pulse had stopped or was too weak to monitor. I found myself rising up out of my body. I looked down and could see the doctors and nurses continuing to work on me on the bed. I knew I was dead, and I could see the bright yellow light at the end of a tunnel. It felt absolutely wonderful, So peaceful, there was no pain, only joy and expectation. I recall looking at my body and thinking, I'm not going back into that awful low life thing. Just as I was going towards the light and leaving the hospital ceiling, a lovely woman's voice said, "What about Julie?" Julie was my 4-year-old daughter, and I had forgotten all about her in my quest to get to the light. Then, it was like being shot through a gun. I was fired back into my body and then I passed out. When I awoke some time later, the bed was almost vertical, and I was standing on my head to get some blood pressure back into me. I then spoke to the nurses and anyone who would listen and told them that I was dead and that I had returned. They just said that it was close and they seemed to be apologizing for the doctor and hoping they would not be sued. Afterwards, I have never been scared of death and have had various strange experiences, including an out-of-body experience, which I have also written onto this website.